Imagine waking up one morning with a broken arm. No hospital, no painkillers, no X-ray machine, no doctor with a white coat and a clipboard. Just you, a cold dark cave, the sound of wind howling outside, and a bone that is very clearly pointing in the wrong direction. What would you do? Now here's the part that will mess with your head. 30,000 years ago, a man had exactly that happen to him. And not only did he survive, archaeologists found his skeleton, and that broken arm had completely healed. Cleanly, properly, like someone who actually knew what they were doing had taken care of it. No hospital, no surgeon, no antibiotics, just ancient humans figuring it out. And this is not a one-time miracle story. Scientists have found skulls with holes drilled into them on purpose that showed signs of healing. Mummies with surgical stitching. Prehistoric teeth with filling-like materials packed into cavities. A man who lived for years with a severely deformed hip that would have made walking nearly impossible, yet he survived. Which means someone was feeding him, caring for him, keeping him alive. Stay till the end of this video because the last part is going to completely change how you think about ancient humans. These weren't grunting, stumbling brutes who dropped dead at 30. They were something far more surprising. And honestly, kind of incredible. So let's go back. Way back. We're talking tens of thousands of years before the first pharmacy, before the first med school. Before anyone had ever written down a single word about the human body. The world is wild and dangerous. Every single day is a physical challenge. You're hunting animals that could kill you. You're climbing, running, lifting, falling. Infections don't care about your survival. Parasites don't take days off. And yet somehow humans not only survived, they thrived. They spread across the entire planet. How? The answer starts with something you probably have in your kitchen right now. Plants everywhere, and ancient humans weren't just eating them, they were using them like a pharmacy that grew out of the ground. Here's the thing about living in the wild for your entire life. You learn it. Deeply, intimately, the way a modern person knows how to navigate a smartphone or drive a car, a prehistoric human knew the landscape around them like it was an extension of their own body. They knew which berries caused vomiting, which bark reduced fever, which roots stopped bleeding. Not because they read it somewhere, but because generations of humans before them had tested, observed, experimented, and passed that knowledge down by word of mouth. Scientists call this ethnobotany, the study of how humans have used plants for medicine. And when researchers looked at the plant knowledge of indigenous communities that still live close to nature today, they found something shocking. These communities had identified hundreds of plants with genuine medicinal properties. Plants that modern pharmaceutical companies have actually studied and turned into real drugs. Willow bark, which ancient humans chewed for pain, contains salicin, the natural compound that we eventually synthesized into aspirin. Turmeric, used for thousands of years to reduce swelling, contains curcumin, which is now studied as an anti-inflammatory. The poppy plant, which ancient civilizations used to manage pain, became the basis for modern opioid medicine. They didn't have chemistry labs, they had time, observation, and an enormous amount of trial and error that, unfortunately, did not go well for everyone who tried it first. But the knowledge that survived? It worked. Now let's talk about injuries. Because if you think about the daily life of a prehistoric human hunting, climbing trees, fighting off predators, building shelters by hand injuries, weren't occasional. They were practically guaranteed. So what happened when someone broke a bone? This is where it gets genuinely impressive. Archaeologists have found ancient skeletons with bones that had fractured and then refused correctly. That doesn't happen on its own. If you break a bone and just leave it, it will heal but badly. It'll heal crooked. It'll heal weak. For a bone to heal properly, it needs to be set, meaning someone has to push the broken pieces back into alignment and then keep them there, completely still, while the body does the repair work. Ancient humans figured this out. They used splints made from stiff materials, wood, bark, animal bone, to immobilize broken limbs. They wrapped them tightly with strips of animal hide or plant fiber. And then they waited. Weeks, sometimes months. The fact that we find skeletons with properly healed fractures is direct physical proof that these communities had medical knowledge, had caregivers, and had the organizational patience to look after an injured person for extended periods of time. That's not luck. That's a healthcare system, just one built from the forest instead of concrete and steel. But here's where things get truly wild. Archaeologists have found human skulls, multiple skulls, from different parts of the world, from thousands of years apart, with circular holes in them. Not holes from accidents, not holes from battle injuries. Clean, deliberate, carefully made holes. This practice is called trepanation, and it is the oldest known surgical procedure in human history. The oldest confirmed trepan skulls are around 10,000 years old. Some researchers believe the practice goes back even further. And the truly mind-bending part? Many of these skulls show bone regrowth around the edges of the holes, which means the patient survived. They lived for years after someone literally drilled a hole in their skull. Why would they do this? Honestly, archaeologists are still debating it. Some believe it was used to relieve pressure from head injuries, like what happens when a brain swells after a severe blow. This would actually make medical sense. Releasing intracranial pressure can save a life. Some believe it had spiritual or ritual purposes, meant to release evil spirits or whatever was causing seizures and strange behavior. Others think it may have been both, that in a world where the physical and spiritual were not separate categories, healing the body and healing the soul were the same act. Whatever the reason, the execution was real. These ancient surgeons were using sharpened flint, obsidian blades, or bone tools to carefully bore through the hardest structure in the human body, without killing the patient. That is not guesswork. That is skill. Practiced, refined, deliberately taught skill. Let's take a breath and think about infections for a second, because in the modern world, this is one of the big things we forget. Before antibiotics, which only became available in the 1940s, infections were killers. A small cut that got dirty could kill you. A tooth abscess could spread to your brain. Childbirth was one of the most dangerous things a woman could survive. Infections were the great equalizer. The invisible enemy that didn't care how strong or clever you were. So how did ancient humans deal with this? First, and this is underappreciated, they had different exposure patterns. Living in small, mobile groups meant that the massive epidemic diseases that would later devastate settled civilizations simply couldn't get a foothold. You need large, dense, connected populations for diseases like smallpox or plague to spread explosively. A band of 30 people moving through the wilderness doesn't give a virus much room to work with. Second, they used what the environment offered. Honey, which ancient humans were harvesting from wild bees at least 10,000 years ago, is a natural antimicrobial. Applying honey to a wound genuinely slows bacterial growth. We know this now from clinical studies. They knew it then from experience. Certain mosses, used in many ancient cultures to pack wounds, were found to have antibacterial properties when scientists tested them. Clay, used to cover wounds and infections, can draw out moisture and create an environment where bacteria struggle to grow. Were these treatments as powerful as a course of modern antibiotics? No, absolutely not. But they weren't nothing either. They were real interventions that genuinely helped, developed through thousands of years of accumulated observation. Now here's something that might be the most surprising part of this whole story. Ancient humans went to the dentist. Sort of. Archaeologists working in Pakistan found human teeth dating back roughly 9,000 years with small, clean holes drilled into them. These holes showed signs of dental decay nearby, meaning someone drilled into a cavity. The tool used was a small bow drill with a flint tip, the same type of tool used to make jewelry and craft holes in beads. Somehow, someone figured out to turn this instrument on a rotten tooth. Was it painful? Almost certainly devastatingly so. Did it help? apparently enough that the practice continued and spread. Even earlier evidence suggests that prehistoric humans were using small tools to clean and pick at their teeth, something that might sound trivial until you realize that dental infections, left untreated, can spread to the jaw, the sinuses, and the brain and kill you. They also used toothpicks, carved bone toothpicks. Some of the oldest grooved teeth ever found show the marks of habitual toothpick use, suggesting that keeping teeth clean wasn't just about comfort, it was a survival habit. But all of this, the plant medicine, the bone setting, the surgery, the dental work, none of it would have been possible without something that I think is the most important and overlooked factor in prehistoric human survival. Community. Think about the man with the deformed hip again. He was found at a site in Vietnam and estimated to have lived around 10,000 years ago. His condition, likely caused by a severe illness or injury early in life, would have left him largely unable to care for himself. He couldn't have hunted. He couldn't have walked long distances easily. He would have needed help gathering food, moving camp, probably even eating. And yet, he survived into adulthood, likely his 30s or 40s based on bone analysis. Which means his community fed him, carried him, kept him alive for years, with no expectation that he could contribute physically to the group's survival. This is profound. This is not the picture of ancient humans that movies and cartoons give us: cold, brutal, every man for himself, survival of the fittest in the crudest sense. This is something far more human. This is compassion. This is care for another person simply because they are part of your group, your family, your people. Archaeologists have documented dozens of cases like this across the prehistoric record. A Neanderthal, not even our exact species, but our closest ancient relative found in Iraq, called Shanidar I, who had lost the use of one arm, had survived a severe eye injury, and had damaged legs. Yet lived into old age. Someone took care of him. His community chose to keep him alive. The scientific term for this is altruistic caregiving. The human term for it is love. So let's bring all of this together, because we've covered a lot of ground and I want to make sure the full picture lands. Ancient humans survived without modern doctors, not because they were lucky. Not because they were tougher than us, and definitely not because life was simpler. Life was extraordinarily hard. The world was constantly trying to kill them in ways we've largely eliminated: predators, extreme weather, starvation, injury, infection. They survived because they were smart, observant, curious, experimental. They built up medical knowledge over generations and passed it down with care. They developed surgical techniques that remained relevant for thousands of years. They learned the chemistry of the natural world, not in labs, but in forests and fields and caves, and they used that chemistry to heal each other. And they survived because they chose each other, over and over again. A group that cared for its weakest members was a group with more knowledge, more experience, more diversity. A person who survived a catastrophic injury because their community helped them might live to teach others what they had learned. The elderly person who couldn't hunt anymore but could remember which plants caused fever to break, they were invaluable. Worth feeding, worth carrying. The logic of compassion, it turns out, is also the logic of survival. Here's the thing that gets me every time I think about this. We tend to imagine a clean line between ancient humans and modern humans. On one side, grunting, stumbling, barely surviving. On the other side, us, with our science and our hospitals and our knowledge, like there was a sudden switch that flipped somewhere. But there was no switch. It was a continuous thread. Every piece of plant medicine knowledge they accumulated became part of the foundation that eventually became pharmacology. Every splint they tied around a broken bone was a step toward orthopedic surgery. Every hole carefully drilled into a skull was a step toward neurosurgery. Every act of caring for someone too sick or injured to care for themselves was a step toward building the social structures that eventually became hospitals, nursing homes, and medical ethics. We didn't invent healthcare. We inherited it from people who lived in caves and hunted with stone tools and looked up at the same stars we still look up at today. And who somehow with nothing but their hands and their minds and their love for each other, kept the species going. The next time you take an aspirin, remember that a human being 30,000 years ago was chewing willow bark for the same reason. The next time you get a cast put on a broken bone, remember that someone in a prehistoric camp was tying sticks around a fractured limb, watching carefully to make sure it healed right. The next time you see someone care for a person who can't care for themselves, remember Shanidar first, the Neanderthal with the broken body who lived into old age because his people refused to leave him behind. That's not history. That's who we've always been. And honestly, that's the most jaw-dropping survival story of all.